Hello everybody, remember me, Belzelga here in case you forgot. Sorry for not uploading in a while, especially when it comes to DayZ content. I expect to get back to DayZ videos roughly in the second half of October when the insane amount of work settles down a bit. Anyway, here's another update from the pit for you lot. This time I thought it'd be fun if we went a bit on a chronological journey from present to past. That's usually the way archaeologists work too on an excavation. The top bit of the soil mostly contains recent or sub-recent material, where the deeper bits would mostly have older finds. So we start off with some material from the 50s and 60s. What you're looking at here unfortunately is a septic tank, basically the place where all the nasty bits of the household end up. Here we see a bedpan, which needs no further explanation. We also found a metric ton of shoes and cutlery. It really comes to show that up until fairly recently people just dug holes to chuck their refuse in, just like several hundreds or thousands of years ago. After this is where technically archaeology starts nowadays in Europe, the 40s, in other words, World War II. What we're looking at here is probably already recognizable by the people that watch and play DayZ. An actual Mosin round, or a 7.62 by 39 round. Since this is a Soviet round, it's a bit of a guess how it ended up in the Netherlands, since the Russians stopped their offense at Berlin. But who knows, maybe a comrade got lost. Now the next find actually made me gasp a little the moment it was unearthed. A World War II German Stahlhelm. The hole you see in the back is an actual corroded bullet hole. It's really weird holding an object you know someone probably died wearing. Next up are the Middle Ages. Here we have an 8-pole structure. We're not quite sure of what it might have been. You might ask how we know the structure is medieval if we have no clue what the structure might have been. Well, there are a few hints on the surface already. The first hint was that the post holes were very dark and had a sharp distinction between the leftover post hole traces and the surrounding soil. When the actual post rots away, or if it's removed, the trace fades over time. The Iron Age traces we find before had blurrier outlines and had a grayer tone. The other hint was finding pottery in these traces that strongly resemble medieval pottery. Here we see a structure that's either early medieval or late Roman, we don't quite know yet. This probably used to be a walled storage area, maybe a granary, a bit of an upgrade from the 4-poled ones from the last video. This pot's called a terra nigra, or black earth pot. The reason it's called that way is because of the way this pot was made in the furnace. During the last phase of baking, the oxygen gets removed from the furnace, thus turning the outer layer of slip black or grey. The pot itself is dated from the Roman period, probably the 2nd or 3rd century BC, and was imported from either Belgium or northern France to the Netherlands, rather than being made here locally. Here we see a foot from the same material. This is also a piece of imported pottery, the top of the pot to be precise. Here we see some local made pottery from the Roman era. It's pretty clear we're looking at an inferior product. The purity of the clay is lower, the complexity of the shape is way simpler, and the decoration is also rather crude or non-existent. Whereas the imported pottery shows a huge leap forward in quality, the so-called indigenous pottery shows very little improvement when it compares to the Iron Age. We've also found a second well. This one, like the previous one from the other video, was dated to the Roman period, and instead of repurposed wood like a paddle, this one had a barrel in the middle. The well looked like this after deconstruction and will be taken off to the lab that does dendrochronology and carbon dating. Dendrochronology is a scientific method of dating very old wood through the differences in the growth of the rings in the wood. Each ring represents a specific sort of weather climate for a year. A thin growth ring will indicate a cold and dry year, whereas a wider ring represents a favorable year for the trees. Hereby, scientists can identify already known years through other pieces of wood and date the year on which the tree was cut, of which the object was made. What you're looking at here is a grindstone slowly being dug out of the ground. These grindstones were used to grind down several types of cereal. This one dates back to the Iron Age. Unfortunately, it broke into two when it was being lifted from the ground by me. However, grindstones are made out of very porous types of stone and can be very fragile after being stuck in the soil for a while. This is what it probably sort of looked like when it was still complete. They tend to have several types of sizes and shapes. Now here we have some very old jewelry, also dating back to the Iron Age. This is a cloak clasp, also known as a fibula. This is a disc fibula to be precise. It was meant to keep pieces of clothing together before they had zippers or buttons. Here's what it roughly might have looked like when still complete. And here's the second one, a more traditional shaped fibula. It's encrusted with two stones that seem to be yellow garnets. The owner of this fibula probably belonged to a more well-to-do family. This next object is a bit of a mystery. It was found in the same context as Iron Age pottery. It's made from ceramics, but no one seems to know for certain what it was meant to do. There are theories that it might have been something to do with spindling or maybe churning milk. But let me know what you think. Your guess is as good as ours at this point. Now we have come to my favorite archaeological material, flint. This is a Bronze Age arrowhead. You might ask why people still use in a flint where metalworking was the big thing. Well, this is because the area we're excavating probably wasn't that rich and doesn't have any exploitable tin or copper ores nearby, and they still had to rely on good old flint. Next one is a arrowhead / point. This object might not be as obviously worked on as the previous one, but when you look at the edges you can see that small bits are missing. In flint terms this is called retouche. Retouche is when a flint object is worked on around the edges in order to make the object sharper. This is part of a flint core. The core is the starting point of almost any flint tool. A complete flint core looks something like this. And now we end with the oldest object we found so far, a Paleolithic pseudo-Le Valois point. These types of objects are really hard to distinguish from naturally damaged flint, and were made to imitate actual Le Valois points instead of making actual objects. In fact, what you're looking at here is probably something a Neanderthal made, so it's pretty cool. So that's it. A bit longer than the previous one. Let me know if you want something more like this. I have a full month of excavating to go, so probably plenty more material and structures to show. I hope you enjoyed this, and till the next time.